Do you enjoy being an M1 hyper carry, but don't like figuring out how to balance all three stats at the same time? Do you like spamming AoE denial, but also being an absolute menace up close? Do you like sniping someone from halfway across the map with an executing ult that is hit scan and does bonus damage that cannot be reduced? Well, let me introduce Venator. Hey, hi, how are you? My name's Felt, and welcome to this beginner's guide to Venator. Now, I think I've started to see people come around a little bit on this lately, but I want to go ahead and get this out of the way early. Venator really is a hyper carry M1 character that will hold M1 and raise down the enemy team incredibly efficiently in team fights if you build them that way and let them shine that way. I've seen lots of different variants of how to play and build him over the past few months that they have been out. I think that trying to build them as a tanky frontliner who engages with warpstone and shotguns and then echo shards the shotgun isn't the best way to play this character. I think that there is probably two ways to play them, and neither one of them are that different from the other. I will be covering both quote-unquote variants in this video, but to be fair, the only variant is a couple of items that you buy. Now, I usually like to start these videos by talking about the kit of the character so that the character makes sense in context, so that you understand how the abilities work and how they level. But Venator has a very unique mechanic to them called Blessed, which makes certain abilities deal pure damage. Now, I'm going to start by saying that pure damage means that the damage is not reduced by any form of resistances. What you see on the card is what you will be dealing to stuff. Also matters in the case of Iridomini, because as you can see here at the second level up, you get 65 bonus damage. That bonus damage is the pure damage that applies to your blessed abilities, which applies to everything. So once you get this tier 2, all of your pure damage, because it is blessed damage, goes up. Something else that's interesting is that Venator does bonus damage while blessed to vampires and characters who have vampiric burst active. I found that on the wiki and thought it was really interesting, so I tested it myself, and it is absolutely true. So Mina and Drifter take 5 bonus damage from any of your blessed abilities, and anyone who has vampiric burst active takes 5 bonus damage from your blessed abilities. And that bonus damage is extra pure damage, meaning that it will not be reduced. So 5 damage doesn't sound like a lot, but it is a funny little thing that often adds up a lot with Iridomini, because it is a very high base damage ability. So if you're smacking a Mina with Iridomini, that extra 5 damage that is unreducible by anything that they have gotten so far will make them cry. One final important thing about blessed damage scales with Venator's level, meaning that as you go through the game, your blessed damage increases with you until it hits a maxed out level at max level. Now that blessed and pure damage has been talked about a little bit, let's talk about the kit straight down the line. First up is Consecrating Grenade. You fire a grenade that bounces before exploding, dealing weapon damage and setting enemies on fire. Burning targets deal pure damage to enemies in the area and suffer from reduced healing. This ability is incredibly strong. You shoot a grenade that bounces off of stuff. It bounces once and then explodes. Stuff that gets hit by it has healing reduction applied to it innately, which is pretty dang strong, and it means that you're actually a really good anti-heal applier for your team, but the problem is that this can be cleansed with stuff like Dispel Magic, or like a Kelvin ult, or taken away by a debuff reducer. So you should not count on this as your only way of applying anti-heal on Venator. Now, as we level, the ability gets a lot stronger, but the first few levels are pretty simple. Putting 1 point into it gives it 5 seconds shorter of a cooldown, making it only have a cooldown of 20 seconds, which is pretty nice. The second upgrade gives it extra radius and extra burn duration, meaning that stuff that's hit by your grenade will burn for 4.5 seconds, which is pretty strong considering that means that they'll be taking 40 pure damage, which is damage that they cannot reduce, as I've said before, which is pretty nice. The max level is the very cool and powerful part, though. You get an extra 20% healing reduction, meaning you are reducing their healing by 50%, and it allows the ability to have charges, meaning that with rapid recharge, you can go up to 3 total charges, and stuff like Recharging Rush works with this ability. And by the way, because this ability deals weapon damage, it will often reset itself with items like Recharging Rush, but that's something that we'll talk about more when we get to the build section of the video. Next ability up, let's talk about Gut Shot. Fire a blast with your shotgun, dealing weapon damage and pushing enemies back. Enemies near a wall receive a stun and take bonus weapon damage. It's a pretty straightforward ability. You shotgun someone, they get knocked back, they get pushed into a wall. Stuff that's not listed on the card here, though, is that it pushes you backwards, so you can actually use this as a movement tool. It's not as effective as, say, Shiv's shotgun, if you know about that tech, But if you are sliding, jumping, bouncing off walls, and trying to go backwards, if you shotgun, it gives you an extra little burst of momentum, which you can use to get away from people. Other interesting things about gut shot that it's not listed on the card here is that it doesn't always work the way that you think it will. The number one priority of gut shot is that it shoves stuff away. You have to learn what walls are good to shove people into, because if you shove people into stairs, for example, quite often they'll bounce off the stairs and get sent flying due to old source engine tech. This also means that the angle at which you gut shot somebody matters a lot. So if you are sliding and looking up at someone when you gut shot them, you will often send them flying backwards away from you instead of straight backwards into the wall next to you, for example. It has a little bit of a learning curve. I recommend going into one of the various practice areas in the game and testing it out yourself so you can get a feel for how the weapon works. Let's talk about upgrades. The first upgrade, very straightforward, plus 25 base damage. Pretty straightforward stuff. The second upgrade, minus 10-second cooldown, making it only a 13-second cooldown, which is pretty nice, plus a 0.4-second stun duration. Why does this matter? Because at only 0.6 stun, you cannot get off a heavy melee before they become unstunned and are able to parry you. However, at 1 second stun duration, if they don't have some form of debuff resist, you can quite often get off a heavy melee after you shotgun somebody into a wall. And Venator's heavy melee scales very well with all of the everything that this game can let you scale with. So if you are confident that you can keep them stunned for long enough after hitting them into a wall, your heavy melee will deal a ton of damage. There is, however, nothing wrong with shotgunning somebody into a wall and just getting off a light melee, so you just headbutt them. More damage is more damage, and the ability to kill people is very important when you are in close range as Venator. If people get away from fighting you in close range, you may have done something wrong. Final thing here, on wall stun, your next heavy melee is Blessed. Now, we talked about this a little bit, that Blessed means that it does pure damage and bonus damage to vampires. The amount of Blessed damage that you deal with your heavy melee from gut shot actually depends on how leveled Ira Domini is. We will talk about that in a second, but just keep that in mind. We have our third ability up next, Hexline Snap Trap. It's actually the first ability we have that does spirit damage, which is quite funny. It's an ability that has charges by default, 2 charges. It has an 8-second cooldown between charges, but a 28-second total cooldown. You kick a trap that arms after a brief delay. The trap springs on the first enemy it touches, dealing spirit damage, applying Immobilize, and revealing enemies for a duration afterwards. Does 80 damage, holds them still for a second and a half, reveals them for 6 seconds, and it lasts for 30 seconds. These are an incredibly powerful tool in Venator's arsenal that, if people aren't shooting them when you drop them on the ground, they are destructible by the enemy team. You will often catch people by surprise by either gut-shotting somebody into them, setting them up at choke point so that the enemy has to walk into them, and then you can just sit there and hold left click on their face. But it actually deals a little more damage than you think, and it actually does a little more than you think. The reveal is actually quite strong in hectic, crowded team fights, because then people will immediately see when someone gets snagged by it. But if you can put them up in sneaky spots while people are trying to split push, sometimes you'll just catch someone across the map, and then they'll be on the map for 6 seconds, so your team can potentially collapse on them. Talking about upgrades, the first two are pretty straightforward. Minus cooldown for a charge, and plus 1 second of immobilized duration, holding someone still for 2.25 seconds, which is pretty intense. It is a very long time to be stuck still in a fight. People can cleanse this with stuff like Dispel, like any other immobilize, but if people aren't suspecting where you're placing your traps, they will get caught and have a really bad time. The most interesting part of this, though, is the final upgrade. You get an extra charge, which is kind of nice, but you deal 30% damage against revealed targets. People are revealed for 6 seconds after they get in the trap in the first place, which means that once they get in, they are revealed, and so they are stuck still for that 2.25 seconds where you're dealing this 30% bonus damage. And then also, for the next 3 seconds after that, they are still taking that 30% bonus damage. It really adds up. It's a lot more powerful than people think. But because their other abilities are so strong, we usually level this last, and you'll usually never see this in action. Finally, let's talk about Ira Domini, your ultimate. Load your crossbow with 3 stakes, dealing massively increased weapon damage. The final stake is Blessed, dealing bonus pure damage and executing low health enemies. I decided to save that part till now because I thought it'd be funny. But all Blessed damage can execute. This is just a mechanic that the game has. Blessed damage will execute things at 8% or less health. Now, for most of the stuff that you're doing in the game in the first place, if someone is at 8% health or less, one heavy melee that's been blessed or one Ira Domini bolt is probably kill them anyways. However, I just thought it'd be fun to mention. This ability lasts for 15 seconds and has a base cooldown of 160 seconds. It's a little long cooldown, but you get to roam for 15 seconds holding your crossbow with 3 devastatingly powerful bolts. The first upgrade is pretty okay. You gain bonus move speed while the ultimate is active. It's really the second and third that are the more interesting ones here. The second upgrade gives you 15 seconds of cooldown off the ability, and your blessed damage gains 65 bonus damage. And no, that is not a typo, that is not a mistake. Your blessed damage gets 65 bonus damage. This applies to your blessed melee from your gut shot. If you have the T2 upgrade into Ira Domini, all blessed damage you deal gets that 65 bonus damage, making it deal that 180 at base, which does scale as you go through the game. And max level Ira Domini is equally powerful. All of your stakes are blessed. There's a reason why typically the first skill that you max as Venator is your ultimate, regardless of what type of build you're doing or how you're playing the character. Being able to shoot 3 super high-powered crossbow sniper shots, basically, because these are hit scan, by the way, that can execute people and deal damage that cannot be reduced by anything in the game, is pretty great. It's also one of the reasons why Venator is a much higher skilled character than you would think at initial glance. You'd think that they're just kind of a hold in one, shotgun nearby people into walls, shoot grenades at people. If you're not landing your ultimate and getting those powerful Ira Domini shots to work out for your team, you're not being the Venator that you need to be, unfortunately. Let's talk about the build. This is my personal build that I have put together, taking different inspirations from other people who play Venator. So if it looks similar to other people's builds, it's because I take inspiration from other people, because I am a smart person who knows that other people spend more time learning these characters, and so I look at why they choose their items, and I test them out for myself, and I see what works. And then I change my build order in a way that suits me and makes me feel good about playing the characters. So let's talk through it all. First up, you get Resto Shot first, 50 healing when you shoot a hero, 20 healing when you shoot an NPC or orb. It just really pushes you to be online early. 6% weapon damage from the item, as well as the weapon investment 9% that you get from buying it. Buying this on first wave just automatically makes your gun deal more damage, and it makes it so that you are already healing constantly and being a problem. After that, I like to go into monster rounds. Bonus weapon damage versus NPCs and bullet resist versus them means that I get to farm carefree. Plus, because most of your stuff in your kit does weapon damage, this means that your grenade and your gut shot are doing bonus damage to NPCs. Which means that you farm wave faster and farm camps faster. After that, I like to go into Battle Vest typically to get myself a little bit survivable in lane. If lane has been going poorly, sometimes I just get extra regen and skip Battle Vest for a little bit. But I typically just go into Battle Vest as my third item. The bullet resist is great, the extra out of combat regen is great, the bonus weapon damage and fire rate while I'm healthy is great. It's just a really good item. After Battle Vest, depending on when in the game I am, I'll either go for Weakening Headshot or Cultist Sacrifice. If it's like 7 minutes and I have like 1600 souls, I'll probably save for Cultist Sacrifice. But if it's 7 minutes and I have like 3200 souls, I'm buying Weakening Headshot and buying Cultist afterwards. Weakening Headshot is an incredibly powerful item. It only gives you 60 bonus health plus the weapon investment for buying it. But anytime you land a headshot on something, you reduce its bullet resist. This applies to heroes, this applies to minions, this applies to camps, and this applies to guardians. Meaning that you can push down guardians really fast and really easily in lane, and you can also farm camps really quickly. Cult of Sacrifice is just really good. It gives you lots of extra money early, because you get 180% bonus souls once you eat a minion, plus it gives you weapon damage, health, and ability range that scales up as the game goes on. It's just good for Venator for lots of reasons. After I get that early game core online, I like to go into Fortitude as my next default item. There are 3 other tier 3 grades that you can select over here. I'll talk about those later. But my default choice is just Fortitude. Fortitude will massively heal you if you are out of combat for an extended period of time. It gives you a big infusion of health, 375, which does synergize well with Weakening Headshot and Cult of Sacrifice, giving you more bonus health. And that also means that the amount of health you have that's greater than 65% is larger, making Battle Vest even better. I promise, we are a hyper carry. It's just really nice to have all this bonus health to make all of our stuff work the way that we want to make us super tanky in lane, meaning that if people are chasing after us to try and put the hyper carry down early, we will survive their gank attempts. Other possibly positive things, when you're above 75% health, you have bonus move speed, an extra 1.5 meters, as a matter of fact, which is just really good. It makes you farm faster because you will run around the map faster when you are healthy. My next default choice item here is Hollow Point, which gives you a massive chunk of out of combat regen and another chunk of bonus health. And here's the other reason why we like all these things that give us more health. Another item that says when you're above 65% health, you get bonuses. This one gives you bonus weapon damage and it shreds bullet resist. Now, bullet resist shred is not straight additive, like you're not getting 13 plus 9 to shred their bullet resist by 22%. I believe it equals out to more like 20% bullet resist shred, but that is still a lot of bullet resist shred and is just really solid in the early game. It means that people will just get taken apart by you. After that, I like to go into Fleetfoot because it's just kind of a good solid item that is also an active item, which synergizes with some stuff we're going into later. It gives you weapon damage, slide distance, and bullet resist by default, but it also removes the move speed penalty while shooting, meaning you can just hold M1 and chase people down. And when you activate it, you get bonus move speed and bonus slow resist. I've typically been enjoying this over enduring speed lately because the removal of the move speed penalty is just crazy good on Venator. Plus, they gave it 6% weapon damage recently, which is kind of nice. On a character that scales solely off weapon damage, every type of weapon damage you can shove into the build, even the littlest bits, can really add up. Next up, we're going into the I am kind of ahead, and I am feeling good about the build, so I'm going to go the slightly greedier build. If you are even or ahead, this is the way that I like to build Venator, where you go into Recharging Rush, which gives you max ammo, weapon damage, and recharges your grenade. And Snap Trap, if you deal 200 weapon damage in 3.5 seconds, which, by the way, pretty easy to do. Rapid Recharge for bonus ability charges for both your Snap Trap and your grenade. And faster cooldown time between charges. And the extra cooldown reduction for charged abilities. And Spirit Power that only works on the Snap Trap. We really can't do anything about that, but it's on the item. By the time you buy Recharging Rush and Rapid Recharge, your grenade should be maxed. I did do the math for this, so if you buy straight through the build here, you'll be at 20k souls, and if my math is correct, you should have 2 points in Gut Shot, a maxed out Iridomini, and a maxed out Consecrating Grenade by this point in time, so that you should actually get the value out of Rapid Recharge and Recharging Rush. After all of that, we get to one of the strongest Venator items in the game, Spellslinger. This item gives you 5% ability cooldown. Woo! More importantly, while in combat, whenever you cast an ability or item, gain a stacking buff that improves fire rate and reload speed. Each stack refreshes the duration. 11% fire rate and minus 10% reload time per stack, and this buff lasts for 18 seconds and stacks up to 6 times. The amount of fire rate you can get out of Spellslinger is crazy. As long as you are in combat, meaning that you're dealing damage to heroes or taking damage from a source of some sort, you will be stacking Spellslinger. Every time you shoot a grenade, gives you another stack. Every time you shoot Gut Shot gives you another stack. Every Hexline Snap Trap you throw out gives you another stack. Pressing Fleetfoot gives you another stack. Meaning that when you enter combat, you can shoot a grenade, throw a Snap Trap, press Fleetfoot, and typically get 3 stacks immediately. And if you're shooting people during that time, you'll probably have a Recharging Rush proc to get another stack of another Consecrating Grenade charge back to shoot it and get a 4th stack instantly, giving you just an enormous amount of fire rate, much faster than people expect. Now, this is a very expensive thing, and as you can tell, we are slot locked, so I typically sell Resto Shot to buy Spellslinger here. But at 25.6k, so around the 26k mark, you can have all of this together in your build, and you will just dominate every fight that you walk into as long as you are not getting hard CC'd out of everything. Now, you might be saying, but I've seen people using other things other than the Spellslinger, Recharging Rush, Rapid Recharge stuff. I have that down here in the corner. If you are behind and you feel like buying these 3 items is too slow because of how expensive Spellslinger is, and you want to make sure that you are as strong as possible, Blood Tribute, Berserker, Intensifying Magazine, all 3 together are a deadly combo. Let's talk through what each item does, and also point out right now that this only costs 22.4k as opposed to nearly 26k. So this is basically 3,000 souls cheaper than the other version of the build. That provides very similar amounts of DPS. Let's talk through the items and how they work. Blood Tribute. This item gives you 8% debuff, 8% spirit resist, and 4 out of combat regen, which, by the way, with this current build, we actually have 15.5 out of combat regen, which is insane. Blood Tribute is an active item that when you toggle it, you continuously sacrifice health to improve fire rate, debuff resist, and move speed. You drain 50 health a second to gain 35% fire rate, 35% debuff resist, and 2 meters of move speed. This is a massive fire rate buff that you really just have to watch out for the fact that you might be draining your health a little too quickly while it's active. This is a very powerful effect and a very powerful item. If you're going to go this, and you know you're going to go this, you could consider selling Battle Vest for Bullet Lifesteal, or selling Fleetfoot for Bullet Lifesteal, or skipping Fleetfoot for Bullet Lifesteal, for example. But if you're going to go Blood Tribute, I highly recommend having Bullet Lifesteal in the build, because otherwise you will be draining your health really fast. You have to be really good at toggling this on and off if you do not have a way to sustain. After that is Berserker. It gives you 8% bullet resist, and your weapon damage increases as you take sustained damage. Blood Tribute procs this. Blood Tribute will proc Berserker, so if you have Blood Tribute active, you'll be getting the massive fire rate buff that it gives you, but also be gaining 7% weapon damage per stack of Berserker, which will be stacking the whole time, which, in case you don't know, does give you 70% weapon damage. So 70% weapon damage and an extra 35% fire rate for much cheaper than the 65%, 66% fire rate that Spellslinger gives you. You can get 66% fire rate from Spellslinger, or you can buy these two items to get a bunch of other stats and a toggleable ability for 35% fire rate and 70% weapon damage. Now, I'm not saying that this is better than the other thing. I'm saying this is the more cost-efficient build, and if you are worried about being behind and needing to be strong for fights, buying these two items instead of Spellslinger is very much worth it. Why Intensifying Magazine mentioned? Because it gives you bonus ammo. You will have an extra slot free because you won't be buying Recharging Rush, and it amps your weapon damage up to an additional 45% if you keep firing for 2.5 seconds straight. It synergizes pretty well with everything else we're doing, and because when you pop Blood Tribute, you typically want to just hold left click until you're out of bullets, you'll probably be proccing Intensifying Magazine and just getting a ton of bonus damage. Both of those builds are just about as equally powerful as each other, and sometimes even going into the Blood Tribute Berserker version, I will still buy Spellslinger later on. That version is just more cost efficient. I typically decide by the time I buy Hollow Point which version I want to go into, so I can decide if I want to buy Fleetfoot or Bullet Lifesteal. All of that yap out of the way, let's talk about the other items. I find these two items here to be absolutely core for your build, regardless of which version you do. Ballistic Enchantment on your grenade makes it have an extra 22% ability range, and you get 20% weapon damage per hero that you hit with the ability. Because of how big your grenade is, and how powerful it is in enclosed team fights, you'll typically be getting a lot of extra weapon damage out of your grenade. It does also proc on minions, and gives you a 5% stack every time you hit a minion. Vamp Burst, because Vamp Burst is OP. It's not literally overpowered, but it is an item that gives you 13% bullet lifesteal, 10% bullet resistance, 100 bonus health, 6% weapon damage, and an activated ability that gives you 70% bonus lifesteal and 34% fire rate for 5 seconds. And it gives you 75% ammo directly into your magazine. It is a very good item for M1 carries. Next item up to talk about is Siphon Bullets. We save a spot in our build for this because this item is insane. 15% weapon damage, 10% bullet resist on the item, and you also steal 2.5% of enemy heroes' max HP when you shoot them. This procs every 1.2 seconds, and you get to keep that max HP for 17 seconds. It is a crazy good item that shreds through high HP targets like no other item that you buy does. After that, I typically like to go into Ricochet, because then I will just be spamming my bullets through the entire enemy team, applying any and all on hit effects I have from stuff like Hollow Point and Siphon Bullets, and it's also just a genuinely massive DPS upgrade, because this means that even though it only does 65% bullet damage, it is still an extra 65% to someone else than the person you were shooting. Very powerful effect. As you can see up here, the sell prio is you sell Battle Vest first, because as you see, based on how the build looks, you will have Vamp Burst and Siphon Bullets, so selling Battle Vest for Ricochet is very worthwhile, because you still have two 6400 green items and Fortitude in the back pocket. Next up is Healing Tempo. Believe it or not, this procs off Siphon Bullets. I don't know why. I don't know if they'll ever change it, but for now, it's really good. Gives you 10% spear resist, 6 health regen, 4 out of combat regen, and every time you apply a heal to yourself, so every time you shoot someone with Siphon Bullets, you get 35% fire rate and 1.2 meters of move speed for 7 seconds. Because of how easy it is to proc Siphon Bullets, you will basically always have this buff, giving you just even more fire rate than you could ever imagine needing. Fleetfoot and Recharging Rush typically the next ones that I will like to sell, depending on how the game has been going, because as you can see at this point, we're going to be at the nearly 50k mark. So items like Fleet Foot and Recharging Rush fall off a little bit in comparison to things as powerful as Healing Tempo. Then I typically don't like to get both of these. If the enemy team has a ton of healing, I like to grab Inhibitor because, fun fact, Inhibitor does get stacked up by your Consecrating Grenade, meaning that you can apply the 50% healing debuff and then the extra 40% healing debuff afterwards, plus the deal 30% less damage, plus you get 10% weapon damage and 150 bonus health. It's just a good item. If they're very spirit heavy, get Silencer. 12% spirit resist is great. Your bullets immediately make them do 25% less spirit damage when you shoot them. This doesn't show as a debuff at all, outside of like a vague purple glow when you hit somebody. But if you shoot someone on the enemy team when you have Silencer, they immediately get this debuff. The buildup of shooting them for a little bit to then make them be silenced for 2.5 seconds is a different debuff. The item has both of them. The item's broken. If they're having spirit carries that are causing you problems and you get to sit a little bit further back by Silencer, you will obliterate them. Now let's talk about all the optional items. I'm going to blitz them really quick. Dispel Magic, Counterspell, and Warpstone are all here in case you need something that is a bit more defensive than Fortitude. Fortitude is just HP and regen. If they have Infernus and Mirage and Shiv, buy Dispel Magic. If they have Lash, Apollo, Grey Talon type characters, buy Counterspell. If they have lots of M1 gun heroes like, say, Haze and Wraith, Warpstone will give you a little bit of bullet resist to resist them, and you can just warp around in the middle of a fight and potentially shotgun them into walls to stun them out of what they're doing. Possibly is its own little category because these are very specific items that you'll only sometimes buy. Crippling Headshot is in here simply because it's not always worth it to upgrade it. You're getting 3% extra bullet resistance shred for spending 4,800 souls, which isn't that crazy. If you need the healing reduction and the rest of your team is very spirit heavy and needs help dealing damage, you can buy this to shred protections even better. The 35% healing reduction is also quite good. Between that and your nade, people will basically be not healing. So that is quite nice. But it's not a super necessary upgrade, but you can also buy it if you're slot locked and you just want more weapon investment. Armor Piercing Rounds is in here because people will often go stuff like plated armor or metal skin into you, and this just lets you shred through it without caring. I wouldn't buy this unless they have 2+ characters buying stuff like metal skin and plated armor, but if they have 2+ characters buying it, this is super worth a slot. You can replace any number of things in your build with this. Like, in the late game, you can replace Cultist Sacrifice or potentially Hollow Point. Frenzy is in here because I think the item's just kind of being underbought right now. Bonus health, fire rate, and bullet lifesteal that when you drop below half health gives you even more fire rate and debuff resist and move speed. I think it's just a good item. I think it's kind of being slept on. I think they've kind of buffed it a little past the point it should be at, and it's quite strong, but I could be wrong and biased about this item. I don't buy it every game. I probably only buy it once every 3 or 4 games if they have a lot of debuff stuff that I want to be able to resist. And I don't want to buy Dispel Magic. Frenzy's good. This little category down here in the middle, and the last thing we're going to talk about is the if you're ahead and you want to frontline a little bit. If you're ahead and they're a mostly spirit team and you buy Spirit Resilience, they will not be able to contest you half the time because you will just be so massively tanky and run at them and cause infinite problems for them. It makes you really hard to deal with because 30% spirit resistance plus an extra 15% if you get low is just a lot. Spellbreaker is in here in case you know that they're like Grey Talon or Lash or Paradox are doing those super high burst spirit builds and you're just like, I want to reduce that damage a bunch. Buy Spellbreaker. Plated armor is really good into like Infernus, Haze, and Mirage style characters where they need to apply on bullet hit effects. I wouldn't get this unless they have at least 2 of those characters mentioned, and even then sometimes you're better off with Dispel Magic. Indomitable is in here because Indomitable is really good if they have 1 hard CC you need to avoid. If they have more than that, you're probably better off getting like Counterspell or Unstoppable. But if they have like only a Holiday Lasso or only an Abrams Charge or even just the 2 of those things, they typically have to get so out of position to try and hit you with those things to stun you out that you'll just shotgun them into a wall and kill them afterwards. Colossus is in here as kind of an alternate to Fortitude, in case you are super, super ahead early and you're like, I just want to be unkillable. 25% base health, 15% weapon damage, activated item that gives you 35% bull resist, 35% spirit resist, 30% melee damage. Crazy, crazy spread of stats that you get when you activate it, plus a massive pool of base health. I would really only go this if you're pretty ahead early though, because otherwise it's a really big money investment for an item that is not as good as other things you could buy. This part of the video, as per usual, is going to be dedicated to tips and tricks for the character. So let's say you're dropping mid-boss, we're fighting over mid-boss, your team's helping you clear it. There are so many entrances down to the mid-boss pit that you can hit up with a Hexline Snap Trap. Throwing them into these little doorways right here is wonderful because the enemy can see them, so they have to shoot them. So they show themselves basically before they have to come down. And if you're paying attention to where your traps are, you'll know because you'll hear the trap getting shot. You can throw one over in this doorway as well. It's a very simple spot to throw one. You can throw them on this side of the veil so that they don't see them ahead of time. You can also throw them behind the veil on purpose so that they can see them to shoot them ahead of time. But one of the more important things to do, in my opinion, is after you drop the boss, you throw snap traps almost directly underneath the rejuvenator. I typically like to throw some on either side of the rejuve crystal, because then if they come in to contest, they'll get trapped. And if they don't have unstoppable, they will probably die immediately afterwards, because you wait for the trap to run out, you shotgun them straight into one of these sidewalls, you hit them with some grenades, and if they're still alive, you'll Iradomini them or just keep holding left click until they die. You are very, very good at contesting rejuve, and you should make sure that you're using your snap traps to their fullest effect so that you can make it so that the enemy team has a harder time contesting. Another tip is, first of all, make sure that you get all the center sacrifice machines that you can in the game, because Venator scales really well off of center sacrifice machines. You use basically every stat there is, and I do mean every stat, because technically speaking, your bullet and spirit resist scale off of the amount of spirit power that you have in your build. So those tiny bits of spirit power that you get from these machines, from their various buffs, actually do impact you. But the other reason you should focus is because, just like the mid-boss, you can just laden this area with traps. Throw them up here on this little walkway, throw them right here in the little entrance, throw them over here in the corner beneath the drop down, so that if anyone comes down here to fight you, they get caught in a trap. You shoot the heck out of them, and then you shotgun them into a wall right afterwards. A number of times I've had people try and contest me on center sacrifices. I shotgun them into the wall, pull out the Iradomini, shoot them in the head, and they die. It happens way too often. You'd think people would stop contesting Venator on center sacrifices if it's just one person. Now, because you are so good at contesting, that means you should be invading center sacrifices, but an important thing to know, after invading stuff on the enemy's half of the map, especially stuff that is as valuable as center sacrifice machines, you should know how to escape. Now, Venator has pretty low stamina and pretty slow stamina regen, so making sure that you know how to hit your wall jumps, making sure you know how to do your mantle slides, all that type of stuff is quite important, but one last little piece of tech that I have found will save me more often than not is as I'm running away, I'll make sure I hit like a mantle slide to get some momentum, do a dash jump, and then shotgun midair into a slide, into a sideways hop into a slide, and you will get a lot of momentum and a lot of distance away from people. If they're close to you, the gut shot will knock them away from you, but worst comes to worst, you can use your gut shot for movement. I think I've already mentioned this in the video, but it is very, very good for movement when you are in desperate need. That's kind of Venator as a character. Hopefully this beginner guide was helpful to you. I just find them to be super fun right now. I think they actually have one of the better everything in the game right now. Their win rate might deceive you, but it's mostly just because they are a character that does not egregiously win. An ahead Venator is still fightable, and an ahead Venator who makes mistakes will not win their team the game. It's not the same as characters like, say, McGinnis, where even after their nerfs, they're pretty oppressive because of the ability to throw out 12 turrets and a wall that spawns turrets that blocks you off, and a massive AoE ultimate that'll stun people. Or like, say, Warden, for example, where if Warden gets ahead and is building into the ult build, they hit you with Lightning Scroll and have the massive amount of regen that they get from lifestealing off heroes with that ultimate. They're really hard to fight. Venator doesn't quite get that strong because so much of your kit is wrapped up in you actually hitting your bullets or actually hitting your shotguns, grenades, or Iradomini. But the character feels fun to play. The character feels strong. You can get a lead, get ahead, and push stuff and force things to happen on the map. I think they're incredibly fun, I think they're incredibly strong, and I think that everyone should give them a try if they're wanting to learn how to play a different type of character from what they're used to doing. But thank you for hanging out and watching. Y'all are all cool and I appreciate you. Hope you enjoyed the video. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and all that stuff. There's links to other places you can find me on the internet down in the description below, and I hope to catch you all in the next one.